Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roach, your host. I'm excited to have XYPN member Joe Morgan, owner of Best Financial Life, a fee-only firm in Danville, California, on the show today. Joe Morgan has spent his career in this industry on the corporate side, gathering experience from the bank channel to Wall Street. After nearly 2 decades, Joe is now experiencing the most joy he ever has, and he credits his business as the reason. Nearly 5 years ago, Joe opened up his own RIA on his own terms. He's always been drawn to the people side of the business, working with clients as a trusted partner through their entire lives. He has a real knack for working with clients and doesn't expect that anyone other than him will ever service those clients. After testing hourly and project work, Joe settled on a flat fee at a level that works for both him and his clients. Joe says since he rolled out that flat fee to prospects, he's signed every one of them. It's during that ongoing relationship that Joe works with his clients through his program that includes components about protecting what they have to sourcing dignity and independence. Joe has some sage advice for advisors thinking about breaking out on their own, but reminds our listeners just how awesome it can be once you do. If you've ever questioned about how to use your corporate world experience in building a lifestyle practice, this show is for you.
XYPlanning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
You can find any of the resources we mentioned during this episode at xyplanningnetwork/245. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Joe Morgan. Hey, Joe, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great, Maddie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I've really looked forward to connecting with you today and letting our listeners kind of hear from someone who's kind of seen it all in the industry. As we prepared for this interview, I was reminded of just kind of the depth of knowledge and experience that you've brought both to the network, but also to your clients in general. So, Joe, go ahead and do the honors and let the listeners know a little bit about the firm you've built.
My firm is called Best Financial Life, and we're located east of San Francisco, about 35 miles, in a small town called Danville. It's a commuter town, and there's a couple of other towns close by, so it's kind of like all these little hamlets along the freeway. And I serve people who want to solve problems, their financial problems, throughout their rest of their life. So they're looking for long-term financial solutions, and they want to know the why behind all of the things that we're deciding.
Awesome. And how many clients are you currently servicing?
I currently work with 16 clients on a financial planning engagement and 4 additional clients on investment only. And I don't really take investment only clients anymore.
Interesting. I can't wait to dive into that. Let's go back to when it all started and give the listeners an overview of kind of your experience in this industry. I know it'll take a few questions to get there, but did you wake up as a young kid wanting to be a financial planner?
No, not at all. I always loved math in school, and I was lucky enough that my high school was offering an accounting class. And I took the accounting class and really liked that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to major in accounting in college. And I went to college and quickly realized that accountants, no offense to all my accountant friends out there, but accountants seem to record what has already happened. And the financial classes I took were about making good decisions about the future. So finance really caught my eye, and in particular, investments.
Interesting. And so the first job out of college was in the industry for you?
Yeah, I actually had an internship after college with a bank where I was doing some major number crunching on some mortgage portfolios they had. This was way before the mortgage crisis. I'm not a young guy. So I did that for about 9 months, and then I went back to graduate school. And then I got a job working for one of my professors in graduate school who had left university and went into the private sector. I was in New York working for a company called Ibbotson Associates, which was ultimately acquired by Morningstar. And I was running a training program for people who wanted to learn modern portfolio theory and apply it in portfolios in English. And I know that sounds odd, but what it basically was it was a joint venture with Alliance Capital, and a lot of Alliance Capital's clients who were large Korean insurance firms or Japanese insurance firms would send their employees to New York for 9 months, and they would basically relearn all the financial jargon and financial technical language in English to apply it.
Wow. And how long did you spend doing that?
I was there about a year. It was kind of a dream job for me to get on Wall Street, quote unquote. And so working in New York was a real draw for me. But as it turns out, having an entry-level job in New York doesn't pay very well. And I was able to secure an opportunity back with the firm I had interned with, actually making decisions and managing money. And that's really where I wanted to be long-term.
Wow. And that's kind of a dream too, that you actually get hired by the company that you were an intern for. How did you maintain those relationships during the time you were away?
Yeah, well, you got to remember, this is all before the internet. So
what?
I know there was life before the internet.
I don't remember that, Joe.
Unbelievable. So there was no email or anything like that. But, I'd made good connections with the people I worked with and stayed in contact. My parents lived in Houston, and that's where this internship had been. And so, just maintaining connections really helps, even when it took a lot more work than just sending an email every once in a while.
Yes, I could see that. So then you went into the RIA space. Was that when you made that transition, or?
Yeah, I did. But it's interesting because I went into the institutional side where I was managing money for endowment funds, charitable foundations, banks, those sorts of entities. So we were a registered investment advisor, but it's not like, it's a little bit different than being on this side of the fence where we're working with families and individuals where we're the planning aspect really enters into and drives the portfolio management. Over there on the institutional side, it's all about the investment management. What was your performance last quarter? Why wasn't it higher? What was it compared to the benchmark, the standard deviation? It was all really numbers driven in terms of how you were evaluated.
Interesting. And that wasn't a draw for you.
Oh, it was. Absolutely. Because I was, remember I was the math geek. So I did that at various firms for about 25 years, ended up out in California during that period with a job change. And, I found it really enjoyable and felt like I was really helping the ultimate beneficiaries of those funds. So if we were managing a charitable foundation, and if we could get extra return, of course, that's more money for the charity to use. If we were managing money for a corporation, kind of a similar thing, better health for the corporation as their funds grow. Over time, I guess, I just wanted to be closer to actual families and individuals. And as you age, you get more of a thirst to be helpful to people and to really understand what that means. That really came to me during the 2008-2009 downturn with my experiences there.
Wow. And is that what kind of propelled you into the independent RIA space? Is that when you decided you wanted to start your own business?
Yeah, I didn't decide at that time that I wanted to start my own business. But what happened in the 2008-2009 downturn was I had been writing a fairly technical series of articles arguing against the use of a particular security type called auction rate securities.
Wow.
As a result of myself and a couple of other people who were arguing against the use of those, we saw institutions move out of that space, which created sort of a void for that market. And eventually, those securities got shifted over to families. The security, if you're not, you shouldn't be familiar with it. Nobody should be familiar with it anymore because it blew up and it disappeared. But the security was basically a weekly auction. And the idea was the interest rate would set based on the auction. And they would always be priced at par, 100 cents on the dollar. So they were sold as cash vehicles. And people were told, well, these will always be 100 cents on the dollar. The auction just drives the interest rates. You get a floating interest rate. It's cash vehicle. You can sell it back to us anytime you want. And when the liquidity crisis hit and Wall Street, basically stumbled and we saw Bear Stearns and Lehman go down, the other firms that remained said, you know what, we're not going to buy these securities back. And so you had a lot of people who thought they had cash at 100 cents on the dollar. All of a sudden, they were being quoted 20 and 30 cents on the dollar. But not only that, unable to actually sell them at all or get their interest.
Wow. And were you having relationships with clients in that regard where you had to have those tough conversations?
Well, I didn't because, my firm, we had avoided those securities and argued against them for so long. But I was written up by Herb Greenberg in the Wall Street Journal for having, seen this coming.
Wow.
And, it's amazing how many people actually read the paper. When that article came out, I started getting calls from all around the country of individuals, a lot of families, a lot of older single ladies who had put 100% or 80% of their money in these cash funds, and they couldn't pay their bills, couldn't pay their electrical bill, couldn't pay, because Wall Street had so oversold these because of the way the securities flowed from the institutional world to the retail world. It was just devastating. And I couldn't do anything to help them because what they needed was somebody to walk them through how to get out of them. Well, I'd never owned them and never been in that situation. But because I was mentioned in this article, or this article was written about what I had done, they were grasping, trying to figure out what to do next. Really, touched me that my industry would do that.
I would imagine that any advisor that was a practitioner of some sort during those years forever are impacted by those years, just of what they witnessed and the conversations they may have overheard or been part of. How did that 2008, 2009 kind of impact you long-term in terms of your approach and who you work with? Did it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was kind of, as a result of that article and the things we had been doing, I was kind of put on a pedestal at my job, which was I was the chief investment officer at Silicon Valley Bank, and we mostly ran money for corporations, and so clients of the bank, that corporations. And I started flying around the country and giving speeches and being more of a thought leader and talking about the markets and how to manage money. And it really elevated me out of daily client contact. While at the same time, I was getting these calls from people around the country who were not my clients, who were in distress. And, I think it took a little bit of time, about 3.5 years, before I really started thinking of, I probably should be doing something else to not only to help the people that were calling me, but just to give more help to families on the financial side. The financial industry is designed to make money, obviously. And when they work with institutional clients are responsible for taking care of themselves, and Wall Street's responsible for taking care of themselves. And together they figure out what is a valid transaction. But when Wall Street approaches families, families don't have those resources, that education. And that was really sort of the missing item for me, is that I'm not just talking about investments, but when you think about insurance and you think about even estate planning or just sort of any financial decisions you make, most people are not geared to make those decisions. I felt like it was a place that I could really help.
Wow. And with that is what led you to open up your own firm?
Yeah, it is. But there was a delay there. So that was to 2008, 2009. Again, I was promoted and I had plenty of things to do in my job, and that was fun for a while, but it kind of faded. for me, and apparently also faded for my employer because I decided to eliminate my position eventually.
Well, that's one reason to start your own firm.
Exactly. Yeah. Congratulations. You're promoted. Oh, by the way, you don't really need your position anymore.
Wow.
But it was, they were kind of caught in a tough spot because we were managing cash portfolios. So we were buying 3-month commercial paper and 2-year corporate bonds. And when interest rates went to zero, guess how much we could charge for our services?
Oh, not much.
Zero. Right? So if you think about it, our clients were clients of other parts of the bank, right? So the bank has plenty of revenue sources for those individual clients. We didn't want to be seen as gouging them on the investments by charging 0.15 basis points when they were earning 0.00%, right? So we charged 0.0%. Well, that went on for a time, and the bank kind of looked at that and said, wait a minute, we had this firm that was making millions of dollars, and now they're losing, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. How can we cut costs? And I feel like I kind of got caught in a conversation there. And I said, well, we could just eliminate the top 2 positions and move the whole group under operations, and we'll just view it as a cost center. And that's my view of what happened. And that was what was decided.
Wow. I'm always amazed to hear about kind of what the last employment experience was for different members. And a lot of folks, some folks come with 2-year-long non-competes. Others, had a box on their desk and only a couple minutes to call their clients. I've heard so many different stories. And this, that you were actually part of the conversation that may have even led to the decision is a unique one. What kind of education had you gotten? It sounded like hands-on, you were really working with a diverse type of work, but what formal education were you doing? Were you a CFP at that time? Had anyone trained you that way?
Yeah, good question. So back in college, I got my undergrad in finance. I got my graduate degree in finance because, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, right? I was pretty wishy-washy. At the time, the professor I'd mentioned that I went to work for, he really encouraged me to go ahead and get my CFA while I was in college. And that was great because, as everybody knows, the test has gotten progressively harder over the years. Once you pass it and you're a CFA, you're basically a CFA for life. So I had the CFA and doing all the CFA kind of stuff for 25 years. When I started down the road of financial planning, of course, the CFP was a natural to look at. And with my experience in my CFA, I was able to just take a capstone course and take the test to get the CFP designation. So that was an obvious thing for me to do. So I did it.
That's really great for our listeners to hear. I want to be clear. Do you know if that is still a thing, that if you come as a CFA with years of experience like you, that the option is a capstone in the test?
I think they've gotten a little bit tighter on the experience, exactly what the experience is. For example, when I can't remember if it was an email or however I conveyed my experience, one of the things that I think they really liked was I was working with clients in developing investment policy statements. I had written a template investment policy statement. I had, all of our investment policy statements were different for every client. They're very customized. And I think they liked that. And they weren't so concerned that the clients were corporations versus families. They may be a little bit tighter on things like that now. I'm just not sure.
I appreciate hearing some of that, what has applied from the previous experience to current. Things like investment policy statements are things that we have templates of here at XYPN that some advisors may have never even read one before. And I think we just can't harp on this enough that in industry experience, regardless of where it is, bank channel or anywhere else, the BDs, it's all good. It's at least introducing you to different concepts and theories. And I've, talked to many members who really credit their sales experience on all the cold calls they did back in the day, and just being familiar with kind of the landscape and then being able to really pitch it to get a different designation. That's a feather in your hat.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think as financial planners, we're touching all kinds of areas from, sales, business owner, if that's the way you go, client contact, client relationship management, but then also just being able to convey and encourage conversations with your clients. Those basic not basic, I shouldn't say that, but those complex skills that help where you're helping other people communicate in a way and think through problems and challenges in a way that's helpful for everybody. I think there's a variety of skills, and I think you can come from kind of all places and be successful as a financial planner. Now, one of the reasons that's true is because if you take 10 financial planners and line them up against the wall, you'll have probably 9 different ways of doing things, right?
Yes.
And that's okay, but it just means they're going to attract a different type of client who has different needs. So it's really difficult to say, financial planners do this or financial planners do that, because we all kind of do things a little bit differently and in different ways. And that's really important to clients for them to be successful.
Absolutely. And so where did you and when did you start formulating this idea that the breaking away on your own was really going to fulfill both your desire to help people and the overlap of just that general experience that you've had, that it must have been that, oh, awesome aha moment to realize that there was actually the space where you could do both?
Yeah, it was. And it happened kind of this way. My position was eliminated. So I'm sitting at home, searching the internet, trying to figure out and think through what I want to do next. And I came up with the fact that I wanted to remain in the markets. I wanted to have client contact because I hadn't really had real client contact in a number of years. And I wanted that client contact to be meaningful. That quickly led me to thinking about working with families. The other item was, I have never lived and worked in the same city. I've always commuted at least an hour to an hour and a half each way.
Whoa.
And so my other condition I kind of lightly put on there was, I don't want to have to drive over a bridge or through a tunnel.
And so you now have always been standing in this corner of your home office since I've known you. So you must have zero commute nowadays.
Yeah, I love my commute. In fact, I actually don't live in Danville. I live in a community called Blackhawk, which is about 6 miles away from Danville. So on days that I have to actually go to Danville, it feels like a burden to have to drive that 6 miles.
Oh, I know. But man, an hour and a half plus another hour and a half. I know some of our listeners are probably on that commute right now. We get it. So as you started to formulate this idea of what you wanted to build, did you have anyone you were trying to emulate? Were you in constant contact with some people that were already doing it? How did you put the pieces of the puzzle together?
There's a really good FPA chapter here, East Bay chapter of the FPA outside San Francisco. When I say really good, I mean they get regularly 70 to 100 people attending.
Wow, that's a great chapter.
I forget exactly how I found the FPA meeting. I must have found, certainly the FPA through the CFP research, and then found a local chapter and turned up. And boy, everybody was just so welcoming and helpful. And, it's just sort of like finding your people. I mean, it's very different from the institutional world, which, you wouldn't find 2 money managers who work for different shops having a beer after work. That would never happen in the institutional world. Or if it did, something was very, very wrong. Whereas here on the wealth side, on the family side, there's so much good-heartedness in terms of people just wanting to help others understand and make the best decisions for themselves. I just sort of fell in love with the people. So there were several local advisors here who I wouldn't say took me in, but opened their doors, showed me what they did, how they did it, how they priced, what their struggles were. We had great conversations, and I just decided, you know what? Well, I take it back. I did do one informational interview with a firm that's not. I doubt anybody from that firm is listening to this podcast. I'll just say that. And it quickly became apparent that, in order for me to make a living, I would have to bring in assets. And that's really all they wanted me to do. I was a little dejected after that. But then when I realized, you know what, I can start my own firm and I can do what these other folks are doing. And I already have this support network to get there. That was really exciting.
Oh, I bet that was so exciting to see. I think to your point about just, the kind of camaraderie that you feel at an FPA chapter and within, a community like XYPN, the quality of people associated with those associations is really high. And I thought, I think I've said it even on the air before, but I was really shocked with just how wonderful the advisors were that I kept meeting. And then, you realize, well, of course, this is what they do for a living. They're supposed to be totally accepting and open and transparent and make you feel comfortable. So I love that was really a driving force for you. So let's talk about the firm you built and how you did it. I'm always interested in talking about fee structures and pricing. And it sounds like that was something that was really important to you as you kind of put the pieces together. What's the evolution been like for your fees?
Yeah. So, imagine, I'm a longtime CFA, a newly minted CFP. I really buy into the value of planning, which really that grew in me as I went through the CFP study work and everything. But so, I got my website, I've got my hourly model out there, project planning model out there, get my first client. I walk in, or they walk in, we sit down together, and I literally looked at them and said, "So what do you want me to do?" And that is kind of, doing that over and over again is kind of how my whole process evolved. So
Wow.
I have to credit my clients for really helping me put together what I do and how I do it. Remember, I had really no experience working in a planning firm. I'd not seen a financial plan that other people had done. And I think that really worked to my benefit over the years.
Interesting. I want to talk more about this kind of collaboration with the clients at the start. I often hear members kind of be, a deer in the headlights in terms of their first client meeting or prospective client meeting, that they want everything perfect before they even open their mouths. And it sounds like you did it the totally opposite way. We're really open about it. And tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, I knew that the clients that I would get in the first year were not going to pay the bills, if you know what I mean. I really had a long-term view and a financial commitment and a time commitment to do this right. And so that, I think, took a lot of the pressure off for me the fact I was able to do that. And, I went through some incorrect directions as a result of doing it that way, I think, at times. But at the end of the day, I was able to figure out what at least what I think is important for clients, which is I put them under 4 different areas. Protect what you have, know where it goes. So that's the spending.
Love it.
Make it grow. That's the investments. And then I think I stole this from Nick Murray, dignity and independence, which is basically means we're not going to live off of our kids in our old age, right? So if we protect what we have the right insurance, the right estate planning, we got our base, we know everything's good today. And then we look at our spending, we know where it goes, so we understand and we're getting value. And what I like to say is that you should get joy out of every dollar you spend. If not, then maybe you should think about whether or not you should spend that dollar. If you're doing that, and then if you've got your investments structured appropriately, which, after 25 years as a CFA doing highly technical things, I've come to realize, at least in this world for families, it's simpler is much better. So if you get that structured and then your goals fit within your means, it's a matter of just staying on track and, walking the walk to get there.
I have to give you some credit that 4-point structure you've just outlined is really nuanced, and it's something I've never heard. And I think it's really a beautiful way of discussing in layman's terms what you're going to do and why you do it. You couldn't have tested that on your first clients. There must have been something in between. You alluded to having done it wrong, but what you've outlined to me sounds like a real ongoing relationship. When you first talked about your work with your clients initially, it was hour and project. What's the difference, or how'd you handle it?
So I started off doing hourly and project. I think my first hourly fee was like $150 an hour, $125 an hour. And the full planning fee was like $1,500, I think. And then, of course, I tracked my hours and quickly realized, wow, that's crazy.
That's not enough.
A lot more than that. But, I was learning. So I did that I worked under that model for about a little over 2 years. And what I found was clients would turn up. We would have good conversations, do good things. Maybe we do a full financial plan. They would say thank you, and I'd never hear from them again. And not that, I feel like, I need to be needed by my clients necessarily, but I know that And we all know that when you put a plan on paper, the next day it's out of date, right?
Oh.
Something has happened. And I just felt like, okay, even if I could price those services appropriately where I made a profitable business, it wasn't quite having me help those people in the best way possible. And it just, I just, if they paid me $4,000 for a plan today, what's the value of that plan, 10 or even 5 years from now? It's probably zero. And if they put it on a shelf for 5 years and then want to come back to me or somebody else, they've got to start all over from scratch, because that's exactly where that plan would sit for 5 years, is on a shelf. It wouldn't be looked at. And I just didn't feel right providing that type of service. So I no longer do hourly or project planning. And when prospective clients call me up for that, I really get into it with them. And if they really do just need an hourly planner, there's several really good hourly planners here nearby that I refer to if they want a local planner. It's just not what I do.
Yeah. And to kind of have that inherent understanding of your value, that it isn't just in that plan, it's about the accountability and the partnership and the longevity of the relationship. You must be able to convey that well now to the folks that are interested in it. Do you see any pushback to that? I mean, are the hourly people upset that you can't service them, or do you even take a stab at trying to talk to them about, actually, you're asking for 1 hour, but I'd like to talk to you about 8 months, or something like that?
Yeah, I don't really do it that way. I mean, I just basically explain it like I just did. Mm-hmm. And it either hits home or it doesn't, right? I mean, if they really want hourly, like I said, I've got people I can refer to them. But if they're interested, they say, tell me more, then I can, kind of open up the door to what I do. And whether or not they become a client of mine, at least I've, kind of shared a little bit about what this whole financial planning thing is about. I don't know about other advisors on this call, but I rarely get in contact with somebody who currently has an advisor. It's mostly people who have cash in the bank, or they're looking forward to retirement, and they've never worked with an advisor. They've never done any planning. They don't know what this whole thing is about. And, of course, like most people out there, when they go to talk to a financial provider, they're on guard. So I really try to gently sort of, talk about how I see the industry working, how it should work, and, the other advisors in my network and how they work. And, if somebody's right for another advisor, I'm more than happy to pass them off.
Wow, that's great. So what fee structure did you end up with now that we've kind of moved away?
Yeah, so let me, before I give you the numbers on the fee structure, let me just sort of set the stage. So
please.
I mentioned I live in Danville. There's a couple of other towns around here. There's about 70,000 households within I would say 10-mile radius. And these are very much, they would consider themselves upper middle class, but if you compared them to everybody across the country, we're talking, pretty well off people. So they're making, as a family, anywhere between 300,000 and maybe $1 million or a little bit more. Their home is probably worth anywhere between $1.2 million and $2.5 million, $3 million. They're commuting. They don't have a lot of time, to deal with this stuff. They love it here. They were not born here. Most everybody here is a transplant.
Wow.
A lot of people want to stay here though, because it is we have good weather and good things to do and culture nearby and all of that. So we're talking about that type of client. I think that's important to understand before you really dive into the numbers on what you charge. So I charge flat fee. I charge the same fee to everybody. It's $8,500 the first year and $5,000 a year thereafter. And so the way they pay that is $3,500 up front, and then we go on a $5,000 per year pace, per month or monthly or quarterly, whatever they want to do going forward. And that gets you all of the financial planning that we've talked about, all of those 4 areas, including the investments. It does not get you the management of the investments. If you want to manage your own investments, then I'll give you a Vanguard fund allocation. You can go away and do it. yourself. If you want me to manage your investments, then I charge a separate fee for that. That's 0.7% on the first million and then down from there. I also dropped the planning fee from, remember, it's $5,000 a year on an ongoing basis. I dropped that to $3,500 because if I have the accounts in-house, things are a little bit easier.
This is becoming a theme of both my talks with members and both on this podcast and just generally is this flat fee. And I think it scares a lot of people because what if you get that super complex person that warrants more than your $8,500 fee? How do you handle that?
Yeah, well, when I was doing project fees, what I would do is I would do an introductory call, I'd gather some information, then we would meet in person, I would learn about their situation, and then we would leave the meeting, and I would go out and do some black box calculation to get to a fee, right? and I had a black box, right? I had an Excel sheet, and I would send it over to the prospective client. And a couple things about that really turned me off after I experienced it. One, it's a very disjointed thing to spend so much time with a client and them not know what this is going to cost. I mean, that's the whole barrier they have to working with financial people is they think you might work against them, right? So that lack of clarity does not help your credibility at all. And the second thing is I found that, every time I did that, the black box would come up probably within $500 or $800, right? So the range of projects was maybe $4,000 to $5,000 or something, right?
Interesting.
And so do I really care? Do I really have the knowledge about the metrics on my business to know that I should be charging $4,000 versus $5,000? Well, maybe that's a pretty wide range, and you might say you do. But if it averages $4,500 and you just charge everybody $4,500, don't you think you'd be okay? I think so. And so that's kind of how I got to, my pricing. Now, I originally, when I went to this flat fee pricing, I was scared, no doubt, because I was asking people to sign up for life, right? And I was pricing it a lot lower. I was pricing it $2,400 upfront and $3,500 a year. But I was always tracking my hours, and I figured out that just wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to be able to create a sustainable business at that level. So I had to raise my rates 2 years ago.
Wow. And how did that go?
Well, I can tell you this. The last 15 prospects that I met in person have signed up.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's the last 15 prospects, meaning it's the 15 that I've met with under this model. So everybody I've sat with under this model has said yes. And then I had a few additional clients who were previous, project clients who converted over to ongoing. So I'm not counting those guys. I'm talking about new, fresh prospects from day one. Sit down, describe this. They've said yes. So, I'm obviously pretty happy about that, but it also, points the arrow at, there's probably room for improvement. And I don't want that to be a price increase. I want it to be more of a volume increase. In other words, I need to be getting in front of more people.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds like you have a really good success rate with being in front of people. The fee conversation is something that is ever going, and it just never ends with advisors. You're always tweaking it just a little bit. I know AdvicePay has rolled out a fee calculator to help advisors understand at least hourly rates and what to take into consideration. But I'm really finding that the members I talk to with this flat fee, there's just so much clarity around it. And sure, you may need to raise it eventually, but ultimately, one client balances out the other. And I heard you say that these clients of yours are signing up for life. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, this is an ongoing financial planning arrangements, right? And this is meant to be forever and ever, right? I'm meant to be your outsourced CFO, if that's what you want to look at it as. But I'm meant to know everything about your financial situation and help you make the best decisions for life. And I'm going to get better and better at that the more I know about you and the more we work together. And so, yeah, I think certainly for a prospective client who's never had a financial advisor and they're looking at, let's say, retirement, even if, I have clients in their 40s and they're thinking about retirement in their 60s and they just want to, get this all sort of wrapped up and figured out, I think they like the idea that this is for life.
Yeah, I bet. I bet that's a huge value add that someone becomes that intimately familiar with their financial picture that they would need them through the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about kind of capacity for you. When you say that you're working with about 16 client households, is that full time for you, or are you looking to scale and grow even bigger than that?
Yeah, no, it's nowhere near full time. I mean, I really haven't done any advertising or marketing until this past probably 12, 15 months or so. And even that, I'm working with a marketing consultant. And so we've rebranded the company. We renamed the company. The name of the company used to be my initials, JWM Wealth Management. I named it that because I didn't know what else to call it at the time. But we've renamed it Best Financial Life because that's really what we're trying to do is build your best financial life. That seems, I'm really happy with that. New website and some marketing programs that we're getting started. I'm sorry, I totally forgot your question because I got hooked on the marketing because my mind is looking forward and it's all about, let's get the volume up and get more people to talk. Oh, the capacity question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So, the numbers on that, again, I track my hours, so I'm continuously looking at this, but I think for a client in the first year, I'm spending about 60 hours on that client. And then in subsequent years, it's hard to tell because I don't have, a lot of data there, but it's probably 20 to maybe more than 20, 25 hours per client. So if there's 1,800 hours in a year, and 60 hours per client, you can only do 30 new clients in a year. That's working full-time 100% on those guys.
Got it.
Right. So I'd like to bring in about one client a month. I think that's a good pace of growth. And that's what our plan is to do going forward.
I really respect that. We recently had Alex Yeager on the podcast, and he was talking a lot about how he's kind of capped his business at about 40 clients because that's about the number of clients that he can know everything about. And if they pick up the phone and call him, he could pick up that phone and be able to talk to them. Is that kind of a goal that you share of being able to really you be the person that services your clients?
Yeah, I'm going to be a solo shop forever as long as I can help it. I mentioned I have a marketing consultant. I have an operations consultant. I just started working with Sharice Hagan. Many people will know Sharice on the podcast. And I may have a virtual assistant at some point, but it's really kind of hard and fast for me that I'll be the only person who ever has contact with my clients.
Wow.
This is all about trust and making sure we're headed the right direction. And, I've got to be the funnel for that information from my side going to the client because I've got to be the last sort of person checking quality, making sure we're giving the right advice, making sure the calculations are correct, making sure things are set up correctly so that the clients have confidence in the business and in me. So I may have employees at some point in the future, but I really don't think anyone else will ever be in touch with clients except for me.
Awesome. Talk to us a bit about what your outsourced ops support looks like with Sharice. What specific tasks are you looking to outsource when it comes to just the day-to-day work of the running the firm?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not really there yet. I'm working with Sharice to build workflows and really put processes in place. And once I get the processes in place, then I can look to, sort of outsource, who can do this on a regular basis, right? So Sharice is helping me dig through, my brain
Yes.
and put it on paper and then make it work mechanically and, with the technology. Just started working together actually middle of last month. So I'm excited to get a little bit more efficient, not just for the time, but for the quality control really is what that's about. Making sure that I've got everything in shape before I touch that client. That's one thing that I think advisors really it should think about. It really has helped me to really think about is, my desk could be a mess. My books could be behind. Billing confirmations, at least, internally, my records could be off. My compliance could be behind, although don't tell anybody in compliance that. But if I walk into that room with that client and give them 100% of my attention and I deliver value in a real sense, not just in the in-person meetings, but every touch point, the business will be fine. If I do that, the business will be fine. So I've always done that. My 25 years in the corporate world really gave me that sort of professionalism that I didn't really know I had until I got out here in this world and compared to what I see elsewhere. But just being professional, responding on time, responding quickly, setting meetings, making sure the clients know where to go, making sure they know what's expected of them, reacting professionally within the meetings. All of that stuff is huge when you're working with people who are nervous about their future, uncertain about what to do, and are in the process of building trust with you.
Well said. Do you work with a type of specific client? Do you have a niche?
Yeah, so I followed that whole niche conversation from the start over the past 5 years, and I fought it tooth and nail forever and ever. And I didn't know why I fought it. Honestly, probably wasn't for all the reasons people assume. But what I figured out was I fought it because look at me, say 1 year into the business or a year and a half into the business, I hadn't worked with enough clients to know what I wanted to do, or even, what type of needs the clients had that were out here, right? So I had to kind of develop that sense by sitting in front of clients and asking them what do they want. That really helped me develop that sense. And that helped me structure the fee model, which I think has really defined the type of client that I'm good for. So I'm really good at creating space for clients to open up and honestly address their financial situation. And I really enjoy seeing the release of their financial stress and anxiety. What I'm not really good at is fully optimizing every detail for clients who already know they're going to be okay, right? So the guy who has $15 million, but he wants to save 100, he wants to get his taxes down by $300. I'm not really good at working with that type of client, right? But I mean, they're out there.
Yeah.
So you got to be clear about that. So if you look at my model, my pricing model, where it's a flat fee, unlimited time, unlimited meetings, I want to be supportive in every area of your financial life.
Wow.
It's really good for people who need that full support. So who is that? It could be somebody who's taking on the family finances for the first time. So you think about a recent widow or a divorcee. I've worked with plenty of each of those where, somebody who's never logged into their bank account online. Okay, well, let's pull it up and, let's figure this out, right? Those people, I think, are appreciative of the fact that they know exactly what they're paying me, and they're comfortable asking me any and every question that comes to mind, because that's really what they need to learn from the base up. The other type of client that really enjoys, I think really fits with my model, are clients who are concerned, maybe not concerned, but uncertain that they're going to be able to do everything they want in life, right? So they think they have enough money to do what they want, but they don't know. And the idea of all of the decisions that have to happen between now and retirement, and then the fact that once you hit retirement, most of those decisions are locked in for the next 30 years, really scares them, right? And so they just want to see, touch, and feel what their future is going to be like and feel confident it's going to happen. So again, they can pay the flat rate. We spend a lot of time together. We build all of that, and they can see it, and they don't have the uncertainty of what it's going to cost, and they don't have the uncertainty, of course, that I'm going to sell them a product, because I don't sell products as most of us don't.
Yeah. What a great overview of the type of client that you want to attract, and you do attract. It sounds like your close rate is pretty on point. What brought all those recent clients into your door? Was it the recent investment into your marketing, or were these folks that you'd been kind of drip campaigning for a couple of years through your marketing channels? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I get most of my clients. Well, let's divide this up. So before 6 months ago,
okay,
I got most of my clients from NAPFA or from other advisors in the area. Right? Because
nice.
I don't have a minimum fee. I don't require AUM. So I'm a pretty good outlet for an advisor that has, say, $1 million minimum or requires you to have $1 million investable assets, not in the 401k, that sort of thing. I'm a pretty good outlet for them. NAPA has always been good for me. I can't really explain why. That could be something with the geography of the other NAPA advisors here. There's not a lot of us in this sort of corridor. We're all good. Everybody's good that's in NAPA here, but that's probably part of it. So again, I was getting clients fairly regularly, enough to sort of, for me to, help people and keep the business moving. And then six months ago, I started working with this marketing consultant. Her name is Susie Hayes. And something happened with just her and I having these conversations, going through what is my business, who am I targeting, what do I do, and her not being from the financial industry. So we had to do that on sort of a base level. I think it changed the way that I spoke with clients. So that alone got me, I think, to get more clients from the phone consultation to the in-person consultation. So I've signed more clients in the past 6 months just as a result of having that outside person to really sort of talk through things with.
Wow, what a good investment!
It's been a very good investment. And like I said, I mean, we've done practical things. Of course, we're now we've got a blog. She's convinced me to do a podcast, so we launched the podcast a couple of weeks ago. So we're out there. It's called Deliberate Money Moves. If you want to look it up. And we have a couple of marketing strategies that we're going to employ later this month. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, what I'm targeting is to have one new conversation per week with a prospective client. And I think that'll turn into 1 to 2 in-person meetings, which will turn into my, one plus clients a month on average over time.
Beautiful. You're promising your clients that you're going to work with them for their lives. That sounds like you're not going anywhere. You're not going to be looking for different jobs at any point in the future. Tell us about what you expect for Best Financial Life.
Yeah, so Best Financial Life is going to be here as long as I am. As long as I have the mental acuity to work with people, I want to do it. This is the most joy that I've found in my life in anything I've ever done. So
wow.
I can't imagine, doing anything else work-wise. I've never been one for hobbies. I took up tennis for a while. I played a little tennis still, when it's convenient. But, I really like what I'm doing here. And, I'm 50 years old. If I could do this until I'm 80 and maybe medical advances, prolong it beyond that.
120.
Fine with me. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that is so wonderful. You can hear it in your voice, and having known you for several years now, being able to hear you talk this way just puts so much perspective to it all. Any tips for advisors or even career changers out there who are thinking about moving away from what they're doing and moving into this industry? I mean, if that last sentence, that this is the most joyous part of your life, doesn't convince people that this is an incredible profession, any advice that you could give them to urge them in this direction?
I think, it depends on exactly who you are, what stage you're at. But one of the things I think would be good is to start with the end in mind. And I kind of did this when I started. When you're starting down this path, don't think about the next year or two. Think about where you want the firm to be in 10 years and write that out. How many employees, how many clients, how much time are you spending with clients? What's your revenue? What are your costs? And really think about what that lifestyle is about, because you don't want to end up building something that you feel trapped in, right? You want to build something that's successful for you financially, but also something that really fulfills you. And so if you can get that vision 10 years out and really have something that you feel confident in, it will make all of the decisions that you make between now and then so much easier. Because all you have to do is, when you're at a decision point, is ask yourself, does this bring me closer to my vision or further away from my vision? And it'll really help simplify all of the little, things that come up that every business owner has to deal with.
Yeah. Wow. So many nuggets of wisdom and pieces of advice that you've included during this conversation. Thank you so much, Joe. Any final words about where you hope this industry is moving generally? Having been through kind of the ups and downs over the past 25 or so years, where do you think we're heading as an industry?
Yeah, I think I'm really encouraged by the growth of XY Planning Network and just the attitude that we all have as advisors, that we want to be helpful. I think that is really exciting for the future of finance for this country and the health of this country. We don't teach any of this stuff in high school or college to people, and yet we throw them out there and expect them to work, sit on the opposite side of the table with Wall Street and make decisions. I think just the growth of this fiduciary, if that's still the right word, I don't know what the right word is, but this model that we have where we're really doing the best we can for our clients and charging a fair price that's clear, is exciting for the future. I guess I would just add a note of caution that, if you are heading down this path, realize that it can be expensive and it can be a difficult path.
Mm-hmm.
And, as much as you can, conserve and use your resources wisely to get where you want to go. I think that's really, really quite important as well. But overall, I'm excited to see the good advice that people are giving. And not only that, the advisors that are working together to learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Me too, Joe. Thank you so much for that. You were one of about the first 100 or so-ish members I ever met. And your commitment to this industry and this profession and the community you've developed, and certainly the clients that you serve is humbled me and impressed me back then and still does today. I'm so honored that we got to have this chance to connect. Thank you, listeners. I hope you all have a wonderful and safe day. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
XY Planning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with Alan and Kitsis, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.